Chapter 18. Things Get Ugly. Kipper found the envelope in his shoe just after wrestling practice ended. He opened it. Inside were 2 friendship bracelets and a note addressed to him. Kipper proudly slipped each friendship bracelet onto his wrist and admired them. He couldn't wait to show his buddies. Dear Kipper, we made these friendship bracelets for you because we think you are totally cool and stuff. Love, the cheerleaders. Who were all out in the hallway staring at their phones in shock. Look what I got, Kipper said, proudly waving his wrist at his goons. Kipper's friends, who were all reading the same text on their phones, looked up at Kipper with their mouths hanging open in disbelief. What? Said Kipper. They're just friendship bracelets. Let's make friendship bracelets. Get your supplies at my locker. Whoever makes the prettiest one gets a big kiss from me. Kipper's 3 friends looked at each other like Kipper had gone completely mad. I don't want to make friendship bracelets with you dudes, said Loogie. Me neither, said the other 2 bullies simultaneously. What are you talking about, said Kipper. He unlocked his locker and opened it up. Hey! What the heck is this? Kipper screamed. Somebody's been in my locker! Loogie, Bug, and Finkstein saw the Susie Sunshine Friendship Bracelet Kit and shook their heads in disgust. Kipper kicked the kit into the hallway and stomped on it. Then he tore open his duffel bag. It was empty. Ah! Kipper screamed. Somebody stole all my money! Kipper looked up and down the hall frantically. When I find out who's been in my locker, I'm gonna kiss them? Asked Finkstein. The other 2 bullies laughed. Kipper grabbed Finkstein by his shirt collar and shook him back and forth like a rag doll. What are you talking about? He screamed. This, said Finkstein. He showed Kipper the text that had been sent from Kipper's phone. I didn't write that, Kipper screamed. Well, what's up with those friendship bracelets on your wrist then? Asked Bug. The cheerleaders give me those, said Kipper. For some reason, there is no period at the end of the last word on this page. At that very moment, a group of cheerleaders was coming in for practice outside. I'll prove it, said Kipper. He showed the bracelets to the cheerleaders, waving the wrist at them like a lunatic. You guys made these for me, right? Kipper asked them, pointing desperately at the friendship bracelets. The cheerleaders gave Kipper a strange look. Ew, said Wendy Swan, the head cheerleader. Well, yes, that cheerleader does have a head. Kipper blinked his eyes like a crazy person. He began breathing heavily. He clenched his fists and shook with rage. Kipper's friends glanced at each other, exchanging silent, worried looks. They each took a few steps backward as if they feared Kipper might explode. Hey, we'll see you later, Susie Sunshine, said Loogie. The 3 bullies walked away laughing, leaving Kipper alone and frenzied. Finally, Kipper returned to his locker. He grabbed his phone and found an envelope beside it. Kipper tore the envelope open with insane rage and read the note inside. I'm coming for you, signed Wedgie McGee. Chapter 19. Who is Wedgie McGee? George and Harold stopped by the thrift store on their way home to buy a bunch of supplies for Tuesday. The checkout lady gave them a very strange look as they walked up to the cash register. What are all these dresses for? Asked the lady. They're for school, said Harold. Oh, said the lady. When they got home, the 2 boys sat in George's bedroom and counted Kipper's stolen money. It totaled $916. I feel like Robin Hood, said George. What should we do with all this dough? I think we should use it to buy lunches for the kindergartners, said Harold. That's what it was supposed to be used for in the first place. George agreed. He picked up the phone and called the Pequot Pizza Palace. Can you guys deliver pizzas to the elementary school around noon tomorrow? He said. Really? Awesome! We'll take 5 large cheese pizzas, 5 large pepperoni, and 5 large black olive and pineapple. George discussed the details and arranged to drop off the payment in the morning. We're all set for lunch tomorrow, said George. Cool, said Harold. Pequot Pizza Palace. Pick a piece of Pequot pizza. The next morning on the way to the school, George and Harold walked by the Pequot Pizza Palace. It wouldn't open until 11 a.m., but that didn't matter. George took out an envelope filled with money, coupons, instructions, and a tip for the delivery guy and dropped it through the mail saw on the front door. George and Harold had a very busy day ahead of them. They got to school early and unlocked the door to their secret restroom stall. As the 2 boys unloaded their supplies and arranged their stilts, they heard the sounds of the other students beginning to arrive. Today sounded just like any other day, but things at Jerome Horwitz Elementary School was starting to change. Kipper stood by the entrance of the school like normal, but he wasn't just stealing money from the kindergartners like he usually did. Today, he also wanted information. He seemed a little anxious and shaky, like he hadn't gotten a lot of sleep the night before. Kipper's three buddies, who usually stuck close to his side, were keeping their distance from him. Loogie, Bug, and Finkstein all watched Kipper with worried looks on their faces. Kipper grabbed every kid who came forward the door and asked them all the same question. Who is Wedgie McGee? Nobody outside the school had ever heard of Wedgie McGee, but inside the school, George and Harold were busy spreading rumors about this mysterious stranger. Did you hear about Wedgie McGee? George asked Harold loudly near a group of gossipy girls. Yeah, said Harold even louder. I even heard Wedgie McGee is a ghost. Me too, said George. I heard Wedgie McGee haunts the hallways of this very school looking for revenge. Revenge against who? Asked Harold intensely. Against Kipper Krupp, cried George in a booming whisper. The gossipy girls listened closely as George continued. I heard that Kipper Krupp got cursed by the ghost of Wedgie McGee. Heavens, no, cried Harold. What for? For being mean to kindergartners, said George. Wedgie McGee is the patron ghost of kindergartners. I did not know that, said Harold. Oh, poor Kipper. Poor Kipper. George and Harold walked away, shaking their heads with pity. The wide-eyed group of gossipy girls had been rendered uncharacteristically speechless. Quickly, they began sending frantic texts to all their friends about the horrible ghost of Wedgie McGee. Within an hour, the whole school knew the terrible truth about Wedgie McGee, and it didn't take long before the information made its way to Kipper and his friends. That's stupid, said Kipper. There's no such thing as ghosts. Yeah, said Loogie, but I heard he can go through walls and even lockers. Maybe the ghost stole all that money yesterday. That's a bunch of bunk, said Kipper. What's a ghost gonna do with money? Maybe he'll give it back to the kindergartners, said Finkstein. I heard Wedgie McGee was a friend to all kindergartners. Excuse me, said a pizza delivery guy holding 15 large pizza boxes. Wow, if you can actually carry that in real life, you must be strong. I'm supposed to deliver these pizzas to kindergartners. Do you guys know where the cafeteria is? Down the hall, said Kipper. Hey, who are those pizzas? I don't know, said the delivery guy. I never saw him. I think his name was Wedgie something. Kipper gasped. You say you never saw him? Nope, said the delivery guy. Nobody's ever seen him, but he's a pretty good tipper. Chapter 20, Tuesday afternoon. Lunchtime was a great success. All the kindergartners loved their pizza and pop, and nobody seemed to mind that it had all been bought and paid for by a ghost. Haunted pizza tastes the best, said Freddie Moore, and the other kindergartners couldn't have agreed more. After school, Kipper unlocked his locker and once again put his padlock on top of the locker. And just like yesterday, George pulled on the long strip of paper, switching Kipper's padlock for their own. Kipper grabbed George and Harold's padlock, clicked it closed on his locker, and pulled hard to make sure it was really locked tightly. It was. Once the hallways were empty, George and Harold got back to work. George unlocked Kipper's locker while Harold filled it up with pretty lacy dresses, making sure their bows looked beautiful and their ruffles were just right. George typed another text on Kipper's phone and left a new envelope beside it. Then they locked the door with Kipper's lock and set everything up so it would work again the same way tomorrow. Are you sure we can't stay here and watch all the fun? Asked Harold. We better not, said George. Things are about to get even uglier. Chapter 21. Things got even uglier. When wrestling practice ended at 4:30, Kipper's friends rushed to their lockers and turned on their phones. As they had suspected, there was another text from Kipper. Let's play princess. I got pretty dresses for you to try on after practice. XOXOXOXO. By the time Kipper got to his locker, he knew something was wrong. What? He yelled at his friends. What now? Sorry, dude, said Loogie, but we don't want to play dress up with you. Yeah, princess, said Finkstein. The three bullies chuckled. Kipper grabbed Bug's phone and read the message. I did not write this, Kipper yelled, and I don't have any dresses in my locker either. I can prove it. Kipper unlocked his locker and opened the door, revealing 3 of the prettiest dresses anyone had ever seen. Kipper's friends started laughing as he closed the door and checked to make sure he had opened the right locker. Somebody is messing with me, screamed Kipper. He tore the dresses out of his locker and whipped them to the floor. Maybe you're just getting in touch with your feminine side, said Loogie. Kipper's 3 friends burst into hysterical laughter. Laugh it up, chumps, yelled Kipper as he searched the top shelf of his locker. Sure enough, there was another envelope. He ripped it open and read the message out loud. There is no escape. Signed, Wedgie McGee. Kipper's friends stopped laughing and looked at the note. Dude, said Bug, I think you really did get cursed. At least it's a funny curse, said Loogie. Chapter 22. Wednesday. Another day, another awesome lunch for George and Harold and their classmates. The Pequot Pizza Palace had even delivered salads and breadsticks, and their kindergartners had never been happier. So would I if I had been given a lot of breadsticks. At the end of the day, when wrestling practice was over, Kipper's three friends dashed back to their lockers as fast as they could to see what bizarre thing Kipper was going to do next. They were not disappointed, and neither was I. From Kipper Krupp, "You are invited to my pretty dolly tea party. If you need to borrow a dolly, meet me at my locker. I got extras, XOXO. Kipper was already angry when he reached his locker. He knew something was not right. "What?" he yelled at his friends. "What are you guys laughing about?" "Dude," said Loogie, "can I bring a teddy bear to your tea party, or is it just for dollies only?" The three bullies busted up laughing. Kipper grabbed Loogie's phone and read the message. "I did not write this!" Kipper screamed wildly. "And I don't have any dolls in my locker either!" Kipper grabbed the key from the chain around his neck, unlocked his padlock, and threw the locker door open with a mighty crash. About 20 dolls tumbled out of the locker and fell into a pile at Kipper's feet. Kipper's friends each took a few steps back. They weren't sure whether to keep laughing or start running. Kipper did nothing at first. He just stood there looking down at the mountain of dolls at his feet. Then he began breathing heavily as he started to twitch. The trembling originated at Kipper's feet, making its way slowly up his legs. By the time it reached Kipper's upper body, he was shaking like a volcano that was about to explode. Kipper squeezed his fists into tight knots of fury as he raised his right foot and began kicking the dolls. "I hate you! I hate you! I hate you!" Kipper screamed as he punted his pretty dollies up and down the hallway. Kipper's friends had never seen a freak-out quite like this. Kipper grabbed two of the bigger dolls and started swinging them around and around, smashing them against his locker door and just about anything else that was nearby. Then came the tearing and the biting and the stomping and the decapitating. Loogie, Bug, and Finkstein decided it might be a good time to start running. Kipper's berserkathon lasted about 15 minutes. Finally, he collapsed, exhausted, in a pile of fluffy polyester filling, shredded dolly dresses, and tiny plastic arms, legs, and heads. Kipper just sat there, breathing slowly for a long time and stirring at nothing. Then Kipper thought of something. It was as if he had finally figured out the mysteries of the ages. He stood up and grabbed his padlock from the top of his locker. Carefully, he turned it over and over again in his hands, studying it very closely. "Aha!" he exclaimed. Chapter 23, Thursday. Things were back to normal on Thursday. Kipper stood in front of the school and made every kindergartner hand over their lunch money. "Things are going to change around here," Kipper told the children. "Starting tomorrow, your taxes are going up. You kids are going to have to pay me $4 a day or it's wedgie time." Kipper's three friends watched the shakedowns from a distance. Finally, they approached Kipper nervously. "Dude," said Loogie, "what are you doing, man?" "I'm taking back what's rightfully mine," said Kipper. "But aren't you afraid of the ghost of Wedgie McGee?" asked Bug. "There is no ghost of Wedgie McGee, you morons," yelled Kipper. "It's all set up. I figured it out last night. Somebody has been picking my padlock and putting stuff in my locker." "But who would do that?" asked Loogie. "The same person who has been writing those stupid texts on my phone," said Kipper. "But it's all going to end today." "How?" asked Loogie. "I got a new padlock," said Kipper. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a brand new Super Duper Combo Lock 2000. "This thing is totally pick-proof," said Kipper. The four fiends walked into the school and headed for the lockers. Kipper unlocked his old padlock and threw it into the garbage can, along with the key around his sweaty neck. Then Kipper put his all-new pick-proof combination padlock on his locker and clicked it shut. "Let's see somebody try to mess with me now," Kipper sneered. At noon, when the pizza delivery guy showed up with lunch for the kindergartners, Kipper stopped him in the hallway. "We'll take those pizzas," said Kipper. "But I'm supposed to deliver them to the kindergartners," said the delivery guy. "We'll do it for you," said Kipper. "Sorry," said the delivery guy, "but I've got strict instructions from Wedgie McGee to—" "Oh, Uncle Benny!" Kipper yelled. Mr. Krupp came bounding up the hallway. "Boom, boom, 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 boom!" "What seems to be the problem, Kipper?" he asked. "This guy's delivering pizzas to the kindergartners," said Kipper. "Is he allowed to do that?" "Absolutely not," said Principal Krupp. "These kids are on diets." "See?" said Kipper to the delivery guy. "Now gimme those." Kipper's crew took the pizzas and the pop away from the delivery guy. They brought it straight to the kindergartners' table in the cafeteria and started stuffing their faces. Said Kipper to the hungry kindergartners. This pizza sure is tasty. The 4 barbarians devoured 8 whole pizzas between them and finished off 14 cans of pop. Then they sold all their leftovers to some of the older students. They ate that many pizzas? Wow, that cannot be healthy for them, can it? Too bad the kindergartners can't buy any, Kipper laughed. But they don't have any money, do they? George and Harold were heartbroken. They had already seen Kipper's new padlock and noticed that it had never left Kipper's hands when he unlocked it. Not even for a second. Well, said Harold sadly, I guess the jig is up. Nothing's over till we say it's over, said George. We gotta think of something else, and quick. Chapter 4, Foamy White Ectoplasm. After school, George and Harold waited until the hallways were empty. Then they opened their secret stall in the boys' restroom. George had an idea. He climbed up on the stilts, and Harold pulled the pants all the way up to the top of George's head. Then George tried walking around looking at the zipper hole with one eye. Well, said George, how do I look? I'm not sure, said Harold. You kind of look like an afro with legs. Said George as he peeked at himself in the bathroom mirror. I think I'm going to need a haircut. George's idea would have to wait until tomorrow. Fortunately, the 2 boys had a backup plan. George and Harold ran to the convenience store up the street and bought 4 cans of shaving cream and a box of bendy straws. Then they hurried back to the school. We're gonna have to work fast, said Harold. The 2 boys opened their box of bendy straws and pushed a straw over the spray nozzle of each can of shaving cream. Then George stuck a straw up Kipper's locker vent and began spraying. Harold took another can, stuck the straw up the vent of the Loogie's locker, and started squirting. After a few minutes, George's and Harold's cans were empty. Then they took 2 more cans and did the same thing to Bugs and Finkstein's lockers. George and Harold hid the empty shaving cream cans in their secret restroom stall. Then they ran out the back door of the school toward the football field, screaming their heads off. The cheerleaders, who were just finishing their practice, saw George and Harold running around like lunatics. What's wrong, little boys? Asked one of the cheerleaders. We just saw a ghost, cried George. Yeah, cried Harold. He was in the hallway over by the lockers. The cheerleaders were frightened. What did he look like? They asked. He was invisible, cried George, but he left a trail of foamy white ectoplasm wherever he went. The cheerleaders screamed. They were terrified, but they were also very curious. The girls huddled together in a tight, shivering group as they tiptoed into the school to see for themselves. Everything looked normal, but they still screamed a lot anyway. One of them pushed the button on the drinking fountain, and when water squirted out, they all screamed some more. Ah! Water is coming out of the water fountain! I would never have expected this! What's going on? Yelled Kipper, who had just gotten out of wrestling practice with his buddies. The cheerleaders screamed again. There's a ghost up here! Cried Wendy Swan. Some little kid saw it. It was leaving foamy white ectoplasm everywhere. That's crazy, Kipper yelled. Ghosts aren't for real. He and his buddies laughed arrogantly as they unlocked their lockers and opened the doors. Suddenly, 4 giant waves of foamy white shaving cream splashed down to the hallway. Foamy white ectoplasm! Yelled the cheerleaders. They screamed and ran for their lives. Ectoplasm, cried Bug. I've heard of that. That's ghost juice! Even though it looks like a blizzard had just occurred in one of their lockers, which just makes me want snow in my area right now. I got ghost juice on my pants, Oogie wailed as he burst into tears. Get it off! Get it off! Get it off! Screamed Finkstein as he jumped around spastically, swatting at the shaving cream that covered his legs. I hate ghost juice! There's no such thing as ghosts, Kipper yelled, but it was no use. Loogie, Bug, and Finkstein slammed their lockers and screamed in horror as they slipped and slid in the foamy white ectoplasm. The 3 petrified pests tumbled down the stairs, tripping and pushing and elbowing each other as they struggled to glide out the front door. Kipper was at his wit's end. He plopped down on the floor in the middle of the hallway and curled up into a shivering ball. Uncle Benny! He wailed. As usual, Mr. Krupp came running down the hallway. Boom, 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 boom. What's wrong? What's wrong? Yelled Mr. Krupp. Kipper showed Mr. Krupp the ectoplasm and told him the whole terrifying story. Yeah, it really looks like snow. That's a bunch of bunk, yelled Mr. Krupp. This isn't ectoplasm, it's shaving cream. I use the same brand myself. Shaving cream, said Kipper, but how did it get inside our lockers? Well, somebody probably sprayed it through all those vents on the door, Mr. Krupp said. It's the oldest trick in the book. Kipper studied the vents on the locker door as his passive, fearful expression slowly turned into a venomous visage of violence. Now Kipper was really mad. Chapter 25, Thursday afternoon. That afternoon at Harold's house, George and Harold wrote and illustrated a brand new comic book. When they were done, they scanned each page and printed out 4 copies on Harold's printer. The comic book had to look very old, so they took a large bowl outside and filled it with water. Harold added 2 handfuls of dirt and stirred 8 tablespoons of instant coffee crystals into the water. George carefully tore the edges of each page, then crumpled them all up into the little balls and soaked them in the giant bowl of filthy water. Once each page was completely soaked, the 2 friends carefully clipped them up in the garage so they could dry overnight. "What on earth are you boys doing?" said Harold's mother. "It's for school," said Harold. "Oh," said Harold's mom. Next, the 2 boys went back inside Harold's house. "Now we've got to order some pizzas," said George. "Order pizzas?" cried Harold. "Why? Kipper's just going to steal them again." "That's what I'm counting on," George said with a devilish grin. George picked up the telephone and spoke with the manager at Piqua Pizza Palace. "I'd like to order 4 pizzas for tomorrow," said George. "What's the hottest kind of chili peppers you guys have?" Ghost chili peppers? Can we get double ghost chili peppers on each pizza? Cool! After the pizzas were ordered, it was time for George's haircut. Harold went into the closet and found the clippers and scissors his mom always used to cut his hair. Harold had never cut anybody's hair before, but he was more than happy to give it a try. "Just make the top part flat," said George, "so it won't stick out when I wear those stilt pants." "I'll do my best," said Harold. Harold clipped and cut. Then he snipped and shaped. When he was done, George looked at himself in the mirror. "I look awesome!" George exclaimed. "I'm going to wear my hair like this from now on." And he always did. Chapter 26, When Kipper Gets Angry. Really, really angry. The next morning, George and Harold's comic book pages were dry enough to staple together. George sprinkled each page with baby powder to make them look dusty and prehistoric. "Man," said Harold, "these look like they came from the 1980s or something. Or probably the 1890s? Friday morning at school was turning out to be the worst day ever. All week long, George and Harold had worked to make things better for their fellow kindergartners, but they had only succeeded in turning Kipper and his gang into monsters. Kipper had told his friends about the shaving cream prank, and now they were really, really angry too. The 4 bullies knew somebody was pranking them, and they were going to make every kindergartner's life intolerable until they found out who it was. "Hey! Where's my $8? Kipper yelled at Donnie Schumeyer, who happened to be the first kindergartner he saw on Friday morning. I thought you said $4, said Donnie. "I did," said Kipper, "but taxes just went up again, and they're gonna stay high until I find out the name of the person who's been pulling pranks on me." I don't know who it is," said Donnie. "Well, you'd better find out," Kipper growled, "or I'm gonna stop being such a nice guy to you little twerps." Kipper grabbed Donnie's money while his creepy companions gave Donnie the worst wedgie of his life. "You owe me $4 more," yelled Kipper, "so bring $12 on Monday or you're gonna wish you'd never been born." The rest of the kindergartners received similar treatment when they tried to enter the school. Unfortunately for them, nobody had any idea who was pranking Kipper and his friends. At lunchtime, the delivery guy from Piqua Pizza Palace showed up. "Hey!" shouted Kipper. "How come there's only 4 pizzas today?" "That's all Mr. McGee ordered," said the delivery guy. "What a cheapskate," Kipper sneered. "Well, hand over and Bob." "Okay, but I need to give you a warning," said the delivery guy. "These pizzas are really, really hot." "They better be hot," yelled Kipper. "I hate cold pizza." "Yeah, so do I." Kipper yanked the pizzas out of the delivery guy's hands and headed toward the cafeteria with his friends. They kicked the lunchroom door open and strode over to the kindergartner's table. Look at all the tasty pizza we got," Kipper said to the hungry kids. "I'll bet you guys are starving." "Aw, that's so sad." Kipper, Bug, Loogie, and Finkstein each grabbed a giant slice and crammed it into their mouths. The 4 bullies smiled obnoxiously as they chewed with wide, revoltingly cavernous mouths that showed every mushy glob of shiny, doughy goo. "Whew, this pizza's kind of hot," said Finkstein as he swallowed harshly and wiped some sweat off his forehead. "Yeah," said Loogie, "this pizza's really hot." "Ow, ow, 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 ow," cried Kipper. "This pizza's way too hot. It burns, it burns," wailed Bug as he stuck out his tongue and tried to blow on it. "Ooh, ooh, ooh." Suddenly, the bullies' exaggerated smiles morphed into bug-eyed expressions of sheer horror. Quickly, they began wiping it off their tongues with filthy hands, but it was already too late. The ghost chilies had already done their damage. Kipper and his terror-stricken buddies stampeded to the drinking fountain, waving their arms and shrieking like a cackle of panicked hyenas. They pushed and shoved each other in a desperate attempt to splash cold water onto their tongues. Kipper wasn't having much success at the drinking fountain, so he bolted to the milk table. There, he began clawing the tiny half-pint milk cartons open, one after the other, and splashing the milk into his face. The other 3 bullies followed, shoving and jabbing and kicking each other as they tore the tiny cartons with their teeth and sprayed the milk into their gaping, smoldering mouths, which actually makes sense, since milk is one of the best things to alleviate spiciness in your mouth. When the milk was gone, the 4 bullies dropped to the floor, grunting and wailing and crying for their mommies as they licked up all the milk that had spilled during their lacto-guzzling frenzy. The entire event had been filmed by about 20 kids on their phones, and the embarrassing videos were all posted online before the end of the lunch period. Kipper, Bug, Lukey, and Finkstein all spent the next 2 hours in the nurse's room, holding ice packs on their tongues and crying like toddlers. They started to feel better just as the school day was ending and wrestling practice was about to begin. Chapter 27, Something Wedgie This Way Comes. At 2:45 p.m., when the final bell rang, George and Harold ran to their secret restroom stall and grabbed 2 empty glass jelly jars. Then they headed out toward the groundskeeper's shed. There were always a ton of spiders back there, and George and Harold worked very hard to safely capture as many as they could. "We gotta hurry," said George. "It looks like it's gonna rain." Once they had collected about 20 harmless garland spiders each, they ran back upstairs to the lockers in the empty hallway. Harold held a piece of paper under one of the lower vent slots of Kipper's locker. George opened his glass jelly jar and sprinkled some spiders onto the paper as Harold blew softly. About 10 spiders gently slid across the paper and through the slot, disappearing into the darkened depths of Kipper's locker. Next, they moved on to Lukey's, Bug's, and Finkstein's lockers, gently blowing an assortment of 8-legged residents into their vents, too. George and Harold knew that it takes about an hour for a spider to build a completed web. They looked at the clock on the wall and realized they had only 44 minutes until wrestling practice was over. "I hope those spiders work fast," said Harold. "We gotta work fast too," said George. "There's still lots of stuff to be done." The 2 boys grabbed some supplies and sneaked into the boys' locker room next to the gym. Harold found Kipper's deodorant stick, pulled off the cap, and twisted the dial on the bottom until all the deodorant stuck all the way out of the canister. George pulled the thick white deodorant off and threw it into the garbage can. Then he opened a package of extra spicy jalapeno cream cheese and began packing it into the plastic deodorant canister with a spoon. When the canister was filled, Harold molded the cream cheese into shape with his fingers, then popped the cap back on. George put the deodorant back in Kipper's gym locker next to his soap and his towel, while Harold started working on Lukey's deodorant. It took about 30 minutes, but soon George and Harold had transformed all 4 of the bullies' deodorant sticks into jalapeno cream cheese applicators. Once everything was back where it belonged, George and Harold rushed their secret stall in the boys' restroom. Time was running out. George climbed onto his stilts as Harold gathered the ancient-looking comics and an old walkie-talkie. Quickly, the 2 friends sneaked out to the hallway and got to work. Harold slid a comic book through one of the lower vent slots of each bully's locker, while George placed the walkie-talkie on top of the lockers and pumped up the volume. They finished just as wrestling practice ended. Dark clouds were beginning to gather outside, and a distant thunder could be heard rumbling miles away. A terrible storm was coming. Meanwhile, back in the locker room, Kipper and his cohorts changed their clothes, smeared on some deodorant, and strutted out to their lockers. Lightning was beginning to flash outside, filling the school windows with crackling bursts of fluorescence. The 4 hooligans unlocked their locker doors and swung them open just as a deafening thunderclap rocked the school hallway. Crash! The terror-stricken tyrants stared in horrified astonishment at their spiderweb-caked compartments. Lukey, who had a severely intense fear of spiders, was the first one to freak out. "Lockers! Haunted! Spiders!" was all he could manage to verbalize as a near-splitting smash of thunder rattled the school. The 4 ruffians shrieked in panic. Lukey was losing it. He flicked his hands wildly as he stood in place, leaning from side to side, impulsively raising one knee to his chest and then the other. "We gotta get out of here, dudes!" he sobbed. "Seriously, we gotta get out of here, dudes! Seriously, dudes! We gotta get out of here, dudes! Dudes!" "Just a doggone minute," Kipper protested. "What's this?" He reached carefully into his web-choked locker and pulled out an ancient-looking comic book. "I don't know," said Finkstein, "but I got one too." "Me too," said Bug. Lukey would have added that he also had one in his locker, but he had become too frightened to speak. All he could manage was a short burst of screams as he danced around the hallway, twitching and jerking like a demented chicken. Kipper opened the antique comic and began to read aloud as turbulent thunder rumbled around them. Chapter 28, The Curse of Wedgie McGee, a True Story. Once upon a really long time ago, there was a kindergartner named Wedgie McGee. That's me! He always got picked on by a bunch of bullies. Ha ha ha! They give him lots of wedgies. Ouchies! They stole his money, too. Hey, no fair! One day he just couldn't take it no more. He went to see a fortune teller. She looked into her crystal ball. I see you are very sad. No, duh. I get wedgies all the time. I will give you a magic potion that will help you. But she forgot her glasses. She grabbed the wrong bottle, which was the evil ghost potion. Just pour this on your pants before your next wedgie and you'll be safe. Hooray! The next day, the bullies came by. It's time for your wedgie. No way! Wedgie McGee poured the potion on his pants. But then, oh no! His pants disappeared! Poor Wedgie McGee's pants became a ghost, but nobody was scared. Wedgie McGee was so naked that he died of embarrassment. Goodbye, cruel world. Clunk. But that night, Wedgie's haunted pants came back for revenge. It followed the first bully home from school. I don't know why, but I feel like playing with dollies today. It's because you are cursed, young man. Wedgie's haunted pants got closer and closer. Foamy white ectoplasm. I am the haunted pants of Wedgie McGee! Yeah! This is for giving wedgies. Munch, munch. Then the pants came to the second bully's house. Ow! How come my food tastes hot and spicy all of a sudden? It's because you were haunted, son. Fire. I am the haunted pants of Wedgie McGee! Crash. Yeah! This is for stealing money. Then it came to the third bully's house when he was in bed. I wonder how come my armpits are all burny. It's 'cause he got the evil hex. Duh! I am the haunted pants of Wedgie McGee! Yeah! See? I told you. Crash. And Wedgie McGee just burst through the wall like the Kool-Aid man. Munch, munch. This is for being mean to kindergartners. Once Wedgie McGee... I said Wedgie McGee again. I switched the two letters around to make a different sound just in the read-aloud that I did a few years ago. Okay, try again. Once Wedgie McGee was revenged, his pants became at peace. But beware to whoever is mean to kindergartners from now on. Don't make me come back, okay? Bonus section! How to tell if you got cursed. 1. You start acting all weird and stuff. 2. You want to play with dollies and dresses and friendship bracelets. 3. You get ectoplasm on your stuff. And spiders, too. 4. Awesome food like pizza tastes all hot and burns your mouth and stuff. 5. Your armpits get all burning and stuff. How to undo this curse. You must undo all the bad stuff you did and never pick on nobody ever again. Chapter 29, The Perfect Storm. It was getting dark now, and the storm outside was intensifying. The 4 bullies stared in knee-melting terror at the dusty ancient comic in Kipper's trembling hands. Their mouths hung open in shock, but they were too afraid to move. Finally, Finkstein began spastically scratching his sweat-soaked armpits. Dudes, he blurted, we're dead, man. It's over. Game over, man. Bug began to cry. My pits are burning, man, he sobbed. I think I got the curse. Me too, Loogie squeaked as tears poured down his face. Kipper looked into the quivering eyes of his 3 terrified friends. His armpits were burning as well, but he was too frightened to admit it. Suddenly, a deafening blast of thunder shook the building. The light bulbs in the school flickered twice, and the bullies held each other and sobbed uncontrollably. Inside the restroom, George and Harold could hear their arch-enemy shrieking out in the hallway, and the 2 friends tried as hard as they could to keep from laughing. They both knew if they stopped, they'd never be able to stop. They both knew if they started, they'd never be able to stop. Harold picked up his walkie-talkie and pressed the transmit button. The toy walkie-talkie on top of the lockers clicked with a crackle of static. I am the haunted pants of Wedgie McGee, whispered Harold over the tiny speaker. Hey, cried Kipper, did you guys hear that? I am coming for you, Harold whispered. No, screamed Loogie, who was now running around in small circles, punching his head with his fist for some strange reason. Lightning exploded again, and the hallways rumbled with thunder. The 4 bullies had now become completely unhinged. Bug dropped to the floor and curled up into a shivering ball, crying out for his mother to come and save him. Leave us alone, Kipper screamed, swinging his fist in the air. We're sorry! Mr. Krupp was in the middle of a teacher's meeting all the way on the other end of the building when he heard the screaming. It sounds like Kipper's freaking out again, he growled, slamming his fist on the table, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it. He got up from the meeting and stomped out of the room. Kipper and his friends heard the pounding sounds of stomping feet coming from the other side of the school building. Boom, 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 boom! The stomping got louder and louder and closer and closer. "Let's hide in the bathroom," screamed Loogie through his tears. Immediately, the 4 frightened friends scrambled for the bathroom door. Inside the bathroom, George and Harold were still getting ready for their final prank. Harold steadied the wooden stilts while George pulled the tall pair of pants up over his head. The 2 kindergartners didn't know they were about to be ambushed. "I can't see," said George. "Here," said Harold, "let me—" Suddenly, the restroom door crashed open and the terrified bullies tumbled inside. They looked at Harold holding onto the giant pair of pants in front of them. Lightning pierced the darkened clouds and everyone froze. The stomping footsteps came closer and closer. Boom, 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 boom! "What are you doing with those pants, kid?" cried Kipper. Harold couldn't think of a thing to say. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. They weren't ready. For a split second, Harold saw his entire life flash before his eyes. He and George were going to get caught. Their lives were about to end. The footsteps in the hallway got even louder. Boom, 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 boom! George knew they were in trouble. He couldn't see, but he grasped the stilts anyway and took a blind, wobbly step forward. The bullies beheld what appeared to be a pair of pants walking by themselves. They grasped each other and shrieked in ear-splitting horror. "Get away from those pants, kid!" cried Bug. "Get away from those pants!" Then, as if an angel had whispered it into his ear, Harold thought of the perfect thing to say. "What pants?" he asked. Boom! Suddenly, time seemed to stand still. Boom! The 4 bullies stepped back in horror. Boom! Their eyes grew impossibly wide. Boom! They opened their mouths to scream. Boom! But not a sound came out. Boom! George took another step toward the bullies. Boom! As they clawed at the wall behind them. Boom! Then the lightning flashed again. And everything went dark. The terrible storm had knocked out a power line nearby, and the school was now completely black. Kipper and his crew scrambled over each other, desperately trying to make their way through the restroom door. Mr. Krupp was to be their next obstacle. He had finally reached the lockers when the lights went out. His elephantine footsteps had stopped cold, and he stood in the darkness, breathing heavily and sweating abundantly. When the 4 squealing derelicts finally tumbled out of the restroom and bolted down the dark hallway, they smashed right into him. Nobody would be able to blame the bullies for what they did next. In their profoundly petrified perceptions, they must have believed that Mr. Krupp was some kind of giant, wet, fleshy monster, and they treated him as such. Screeching and wailing in the darkness, they kicked and clobbered the warm, wet, bulbous creature with all the strength they had. The 4 distressed delinquents then tumbled down the stairs and shoved their way through the back door of the school. As they ran across the football field toward their homes, something about Kipper and his friends changed forever. They would never again be the same despicable bullies they once were. Chapter 30. The wonderful, happy, incredibly delightful ending. Monday morning was a very stressful time for Donnie Schumeyer. He had not been able to scrape up the $12 he owed Kipper, so he was trying to sneak into the school through the back door without being noticed. Kipper saw him. "Hey, kid," yelled Kipper. "Wait up! I got something for ya." Donnie pulled at the door, but it was locked. He kept pulling and pulling anyway as Kipper approached. "I got some money for you," said Kipper nervously. He reached into his pocket and handed Donnie a crinkled $5 bill. Donnie stopped pulling at the door and looked at the money in Kipper's hand. "Is this a trick?" Donnie asked. "No," Kipper said. "I'm really sorry I took money from you, kid. I'm gonna pay you back every dollar as soon as I can, okay?" Okay," said Donnie. He took the $5 bill from Kipper's hand and rushed to the front door of the school. His morning had turned out a lot different than he had expected. All around the school, the other kindergartners were having similar experiences. Finkstein was not only passing out money, but he was also offering to carry every kindergartner's book bag to class. Bug was handing out cash and free bubblegum, and Loogie was distributing dollars and letting the kindergartners give him as many wedgies as they wanted. Free wedgies! While supplies last, of course. The line starts here. Kipper and his 3 friends eventually paid back all the money they had stolen, and they never bullied another person for as long as they lived. Once George and Harold were certain that their enemies had truly been reformed, they called off the vengeful wrath of Wedgie McGee. The terrifying curse had finally been lifted, everyone was happy, and all was well with the world. I'd like to tell you that this is the end of our story. I really would, but I can't, because this wonderful, happy, incredibly delightful ending is what was supposed to happen, not what actually did happen. Remember back in Chapter 8 when Tippy Tinkle-Trousers was fighting Captain Underpants and he accidentally froze his giant robo-legs to the school's football field? Well, if you'll recall, Tippy got out of this jam by zapping himself back in time exactly 5 years earlier. Now, see if you can guess which night occurred exactly 5 years earlier. If you guessed the night of the terrible thunderstorm that forever changed the lives of Kipper and his buddies, you'd be correct. Unfortunately, by some wild and tragic coincidence, Tippy sent himself and his gigantic robo-pants back in time to the very moment when Kipper and his friends were running across the football field toward their homes. Ignoring the cautious wisdom of the banana cream pie paradox, Tippy's reckless journey back through time would end up making one small, seemingly insignificant change, and this one teeny tiny itsy-bitsy change would eventually destroy all hopes for the future of our civilization. As much as I hate to do it, let's go back to the darkened hallway of that fateful stormy night and find out what really happened.
And I guess Tippy is playing asteroids on one of the screens on his robo-pants.
The four distressed delinquents then tumbled down the stairs and shoved their way through the back door of the school. As they ran across the football field toward their homes, something about Kipper and his friends changed forever. They would never again be the same despicable bullies they once were. Chapter 31, the terrible, sad, incredibly horrifying ending. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a ball of blue lightning appeared in front of them. It grew bigger and bigger until it exploded in a blinding flash. And there, where the ball of lightning had been, stood a giant pair of robotic pants. "Boys, that was a close one," said Tippy from inside the depths of his giant robo-pants. "Captain Underpants is a lot stronger than I thought." Tippy unzipped the zipper of its time-traveling trousers and looked out at the world of 5 years ago. He saw the raging thunderstorm and the 4 sixth graders who stood trembling beneath his giant robotic feet. "Hey," shouted Tippy, "what's wrong with you kids? You look like you've just seen a ghost." It's the haunted pants of Wedgie McGee!" screamed Finkstein, pointing up at Tippy's gigantic darkened silhouette. Kipper and his buddies screamed so loud and so high, only dogs could hear them. What happened next is what psychologists commonly refer to as going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. The 4 sixth graders fell to their knees, shaking, twitching, and uttering complete nonsense as their fragile eggshell minds began to shatter. "Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-wah-wah!" cried Kipper as he frantically slapped himself in the face again and again. Bug tore off his clothes and began dancing the hula while singing "I'm a Little Teapot" as loudly as he could. Loogie started digging a hole in the ground with his teeth, gobbling up enormous fistfuls of dirt and worms. And poor Finkstein just laughed maniacally, happily banging his head into the grass over and over and over and over and over and over. "Bullies go bananas!" "Boy," said Tippy, "kids sure were weird 5 years ago." He quickly reset the controllers of his Tinkle Time Travelometer to 4 years in the future and pressed the "Away we go" button. Suddenly, giant sparks of blue lightning shot out from the robo-pants. Several special effects build moments later, a blinding flash lit up the sky and Tippy and his robo-pants disappeared. The next day, the 4 troubled 6th graders were admitted to the Pequot Valley home for the reality challenge. An investigation into their mental breakdowns led police straight to Mr. Krupp, whose bruised and battered body made everyone very suspicious. The cops naturally assumed that Mr. Krupp was somehow behind all this insanity. This way to the goof house. Although no formal charges were filed against Mr. Krupp, everyone blamed him anyway. Mr. Krupp got fired a few weeks later, and he never worked as an elementary school principal again. Chapter 32, 4 years later. 4 years later, a giant spear of blue lightning appeared on what used to be an elementary school football field. Soon, the spear exploded in a blinding flash of light, leaving Tippy and his gigantic robo-pants behind. Tippy peeked out of the zipper and discovered that Earth had been destroyed. He crawled out of his giant robo-pants and shuffled through the shattered city, inspecting the chaos. All around him, the landscape was littered with massive moon rocks, skeletal skyscrapers, and torn-up toilets. "What the heck happened here?" Tippy cried. When the morning sun rose above the horizon, Tippy finally saw a sign of life. A little preschooler was walking up with a burning boulevard with his mother. "Hey kid," yelled Tippy, "what happened here? How did Earth get destroyed?" "Well," said the little boy, "a few weeks ago, some guy in a diaper flew up the moon and tried to take over a world. But a week later, a bunch of talking toilets attacked the city and ate him up. Then, a week after that, a spaceship landed on top of the elementary school and all the kids got turned into giant evil zombie nerds. I sure wish you would stop obsessing over such foolish nonsense," the boy's mother said. But the boy's mother is reading American Idol behind the scenes. "But what about Captain Underpants?" asked Tippy. "Who's that?" said the boy. "He's that fat bald superhero," said Tippy. "You know, the guy with the underwear and the red cape. What happened to him?" I've never seen anyone like that, said the little boy. Suddenly, Tippy had realized what a terrible mistake he had made. Somehow he'd changed things in the past, which had resulted in the destruction of both Captain Underpants and Earth. I must go back and undo what I did, cried Tippy. I must go back in time to save Captain Underpants. Quickly, little boy, screamed Tippy. Tell me everything you know about these zombie nerds who have taken over the world.
Well, said the little boy, they're really strong, and they're really powerful.
Yes, said Tippy. What else are they?
They're right behind you, said the boy.
Tippy turned and looked up. There, standing behind him, were two of the biggest, evilest-looking zombie nerds anyone had ever seen. One of the zombie nerds raised his foot above Tippy's head. No! Screamed Tippy. You can't kill me! I'm the only chance this world has of ever returning to normal! Chapter 33. To make a long story short, splat! Chapter 34. The end of the world as we know it. When the horrible zombie nerd raised his foot again, all that remained was a red, squishy stain. And that, dear readers, is the unfortunate end of the Captain Underpants saga. Dr. Diaper blew up the moon, the talking toilets attacked, and the zombie nerds took over Earth. Captain Underpants wasn't there to save the world because Mr. Krupp wasn't there to get hypnotized by George and Harold. All the epic adventures we've come to know and love never actually happened. And now, the only chance of making things right again has just been obliterated. It is with great sadness that I must tell you, this is the final chapter of the last Captain Underpants epic novel. There will be no more Captain Underpants adventures. Just kidding, there will be more. Trust me, I'll be back too!